everybody. So here we are. Anybody new that needs a handout? No. Okay, good.
Oh, back here.
Oh, Jan. Yes, of course.
Okay.
How could I forget? Well, all right, so as always, to get us in the mood, we have a little YouTube to start off, and so this is 9 Enneagram types talking to their dog.
What type is the dog?
All I can say is I'm guilty, but anyway.
Yeah.
Who did this? Who did this? Who did this?
That's a one.
Who did this? Well, this has been fun, but can we do some of the things that I want to do now? Sit. Paw. Other paw. Down. Roll over. Roll over again. Do you ever think about how you're already halfway through your life expectancy? It's just the facts. I can't help that I'm sad. We just went on a walk. Do you promise to never, ever leave me? You promised. Would you quit upstaging me? I'm the source of fun and enthusiasm in this house. People are excited to see me. Ava, there are 2 types of members in this family. Contributing members and pets. Do you want to get treated like a contributing member or just a pet? It's your choice, but the consequences you can't choose. If you're a contributing member of this family, you're going to act in a way that is helpful to everyone. If you want to be a pet and live by those rules, we'll play that game too. You want to see what's on Netflix?
And I heard Dennis say, "That's Jerry." Because that was the first thing. We had a little incident with Zeke the other night. He pooped in the sitting room, and that was exactly what happened. Why? What did you do? I was like, huh? So, of course, there's a lot of speculation online about dogs and their types. And you know how they say that the dog is like the owner, or the owner is like the dog? Well, I'm convinced that Zeke is a 9. Because all he wants to do is just lie around, sleep, eat.
Get some pets.
Get what?
Get petted.
Exactly, yeah. Okay, so to any leftovers from last week in the 8? Okay. So today we move on to the 9s, and again, just sort of the brief overview. The 9 is placed at the top of the circle, and there's some info about that as to why the 9 is there. I don't know that it's really that relevant, but we talk always about the numbers that are next to the type that we're looking at. So we have the 9, who has an 8 and a 1 next to them, which means that they have an 8 wing and a 1 wing. And then we see that the 2 numbers that they're also linked to are the 3 and the 6, and these are what they call the lines, the heart point, where you go for integration, the 3 point, which disintegration, maybe. I'm not sure if I got those backwards. We'll get to that. Yeah, the other way, yeah. So they are linked to the 6 and the 3. So as I always say right off the bat, you have your own number, you've got two numbers, so that's 3, 4, 5. So you have 5 numbers that you're fairly familiar with right off the bat. Okay, so I am going to start out reading from my old notes from a long time ago. It says, 9s are the primal, uncluttered human being who we could all be if we grew up in an unsophisticated, relaxed, non-technological society. So one of the countries that's associated with the 9 would be Mexico. Mañana. Siesta. Take it easy. Or Polynesian culture, laid back. We look at the 9s often then for that reason as being lazy, in an unfocused kind of way. Their style of attention is non-attention. They're just not that pushed to pay attention. They have difficulty knowing their center, who they really are, what they really want. They can be all over the lot, good at everything and nothing. They'll go with the flow. That's one of their favorite sayings, go with the flow. They take the path of least resistance. They put off, they avoid the complex, they procrastinate. They are simple, not stupid, but simple people. What you see is what you get, basically. And these are the nice guys and gals, I guess we would say. There are no hidden agendas. What they say is what they think. They are generally humble. If you notice them, they're kind of surprised. They don't think they're a big deal. They don't demand a whole lot or expect a whole lot of attention. Very easygoing, which can drive you nuts. I think I've given the example of, if you ask, where do you want to go for dinner? Well, where do you want to go? So it's always, back to you, and then you've got to come up with something, and then they'll go, oh yeah, okay, we can do that, we can try that. They're not generally self-starters, so you need to give them an agenda or a goal. 9s can be prone to substance abuse, looking for something outside themselves to try to motivate or stimulate themselves. It is a kind of not worth it attitude. Why bother? Take it easy. It doesn't really make any difference, so why try too hard? 9s may not call you for months. They don't initiate in relationships. And it's that as parents, they can often seem to be neglectful of their children because they're just not engaging as much, perhaps, as other parents. Their gift, however, is decisive action when they do act, which comes in a moment of clarity for them. 9s can be slow to reach out in relationships, slow to make a date, or they date forever, because again, they're slow to go to the next level. They don't clutter up their minds with non-essentials. They look for the simple middle center. 9s can be cynical about themselves, and indeed even about life. It is a very passive-aggressive personality, or can be a very passive-aggressive personality. If they don't want to do something, they're not necessarily going to tell you that, but they'll just drag their feet until you give up. Let's see. So, again, we have symbols for the 9. The one that's often mentioned is the sloth, which isn't very appealing. I kind of like to think more of the bear in its cave. It just wants to sort of be in its cave. And then occasionally it comes roaring out of its cave. Okay, so those were my old notes from years ago. From the Sacred Enneagram, we'll talk about the usual points here. So the holy idea for the 9 is love, holy love. And that's why some people say the 9 is at the top of the circle, that this is kind of what we're all aiming for, along with the 9, is this being in touch with the idea of love, the holiness of love. And the virtue then that the 9 needs to cultivate is action, because that's where it's slow to act. And its basic desire is peace of mind and wholeness. And so it's this peace of mind that really drives all of the 9's interactions. It's always scanning to make sure that everybody is kind of getting along, that they're not creating any waves, and if anybody else is creating waves, they try and smooth it out. So they're really addicted, if you will, to peace. They want calm, they want peace. Their basic fear is loss, separation, and fragmentation. Their fixation is indolence, laziness. It's almost like if I don't do anything, then I'll be peaceful. So why stir things up? If I'm peaceful, just stay peaceful. Don't do anything, don't interact, because then I'll stay peaceful. The passion is sloth. And then, as I got confused a while ago, the direction of integration is the 3. So when the 9 sort of evolves a little more, they take on more of the energy of the 3. And the 3, of course, is the person who's very interested in their image and also very interested in being a success.
It's more about right action, Gary.
Excuse me.
More about right action.
It's taking right action in that next moment. It's less about image and more about taking right action.
Right. I was just saying, though, for those who are not familiar with the 3, what the 3 is. But yeah. So as we said a while ago, the virtue is action. The direction of disintegration for them then is the 6. And if you can remember from all those weeks ago, the 6 is very interested in security and loyalty and all of that. So that becomes then sort of the fixation for the 9 when they start to fall apart. It says, we've talked before, and I always have a little caveat, that as children, something happened to trigger them into this mode of being and of perceiving. So it's not necessarily that this was true, it just means this is how they perceived their childhood. As children, 9s were overlooked or neglected, or felt overlooked or neglected, and felt unimportant or lost. They were ignored or even attacked for having needs or expressing themselves, especially anger, because as we know, anger is not always acceptable. And they decided to keep a low profile and instead focus on the needs and the experiences of others. So this is where they became very adept at trying to make sure things are peaceful. So, intervening, especially, in families, they become the peacemaker in the family, always trying to make sure people are getting along. They detached and withdrew to protect themselves from drama and energy requirements, even to the point of withdrawing from themselves. And so this is a key point. It's like, it's not just about withdrawing from the environment around you. It's like you're not really in touch with yourself. And again, that's true for all of the types, if you want to take it to the deepest level. The problem for all of us is that we are not in touch with our essence, our deepest part. But for them, they're even on the surface not always in touch with what's going on. So they're not really, somatically in their bodies or aware of the emotions that they're having. They fear the disruption of their internal peace and stability and become stubbornly resistant if they feel encroached upon. So again, that's a great defense for the 9. They'll dig their heels in. It's, it's that thing of if you push, they're going to shrink back further. and you kind of won't win that battle. Takes a lot of energy for nines to transition from a lethargic, self-forgetting, or procrastinating posture to action. But once they do, they get things done. Now, again, we can paint with broad strokes. It doesn't mean that nines are just sitting there doing nothing. Nines can be very productive and get a lot done. And it's kind of confusing because, as I say, when you meet them, they just have this other energy of just plopped there. But, they are capable of being very productive in their work environment. They rarely show the anger they suppress, but when they can't hold it in anymore, their anger comes out suddenly, surprising everyone, including themselves. And that's very true. The nines will really just have an outburst when when the last straw comes. Okay, here we go. So the focus of attention for the nine is self-forgetting. The focus goes to other people's needs, wants, positions. And you can see then that that's taking them away from themselves. They're not paying attention to themselves. They're scanning what's going on with you. How do I have to be in a peaceful relationship with you? They have a positive outlook. This isn't loading. And we've talked about how they are a withdrawn energy. Remember we talked about how there's sort of like three stance. You can be forward, going very much outward into people's energy fields, into their faces. You can be sort of standing more neutral, just managing, controlling yourself, or you can be withdrawing. And the nines are definitely in the withdrawing mode. So the question is, why get upset about something you can't change? So that's kind of their thought. Why bother? It's not going to make any difference anyway. So just be peaceful. The main themes for the nine: forgets the self, merges with others in order to gain love and belonging, avoids conflict in an effort to sidestep the pain of loss and separation. So again, like some of the other numbers, what the nine is trying to do is manage pain and suffering. And again, aren't we all doing that at some level? We all have these strategies to mitigate the sharpness, the harshness, the pain, suffering of life. Seeks harmony and balance, leads to a loss of personal boundaries and priorities. So if you're externally driven all the time, if you're taking your cues from outside you, then you're going to have a sense of loss as to who you are. And your boundaries then are always being overstepped because you're going too far in trying to please other people. Characteristics. The nines can seek peace at any price. Avoids conflict to avoid abandonment. So again, this kind of goes back to either the real or perceived childhood wound that they don't want to be abandoned, and they feel that if they're angry or if they're however they want to be, that may be the cause of being abandoned. So it's better not to be that. So you're not being authentic. They can deny that they're angry or upset, and it's what they say, anger gone to sleep. So they are angry, but they're out of touch with it. And so it's almost like it's on a pause button or a sleep button. And then of course something will trigger that button, and then you'll really see the outburst. Maybe apathetic and resigned. Forgets the self and merges with other. If you're okay, I'm okay. not a good way to live life. So then that can lead to a lot of codependency. Because all of how I'm going to feel about me has to do about how you feel and how somehow I can manage how you feel. Well, that's codependent living. Not very healthy, not very pleasant. They can look very serene. And I think this is usually what people say about nines. Like, they look very comfortable, they look very happy in themselves, but it's almost like you have to have a cattle prod, to kind of get any response, get them going. Because they themselves have a lot of inner resistance to really engaging. Talked about being stubborn. The nines are known for their stubbornness. Often appear low energy. Life force tuned down through inertia or habitual pursuits. So they're not the people who are going to be jumping off of buildings and skydiving and doing all of that stuff. Lying on a beach, much preferable. They can be a little spacey because, again, there's just not a whole lot of energy necessarily going on. Narcotizing, meaning, it's almost like they're drugged. Inclined to addictions. Heard someone say pot over here. May seem numb or blank. It's like if they're in a group, they're not necessarily going to be contributing. Because again, that takes energy. And if they're at a party or whatever, they're probably sitting very quietly in the corner. And if someone comes and sits next to them, they'll engage. But, they're not running around getting numbers and names. Their attention, for that reason, then, is diffused, easily sidetracked, and can have difficulty prioritizing. Decisions involve tuning into others, then agreeing or disagreeing. And often they won't disagree, they'll just keep it to themselves. But, that's how they work. Able to see all sides of an issue, difficulty taking a personal stand. And so this becomes one of their strengths, actually, in that I have a frog this morning. That frog has been hanging around. I think I'm going to have to name it. Edward? Okay. All right. I think I'll call him Freddie. So their ability, because of the scanning that they do, where they're always sort of sensing what you're thinking and what you're feeling, that becomes a great strength, because as team members, as leaders, they do then have that ability to tune in to other people. And so one of the things that they're renowned for is being mediators. They're very good at mediation, because they can see all sides of an issue. Self-esteem comes from helping others, being of use, shy, low profile. So again, these are people also that will help you. They love to help, and you can always turn to them, and they're very good about their time and their talent. They'll share that with you. Comfort is a priority. Excuse me, I'm just going to have to cough.
Do you want a cough drop?
It might help. Yeah, I don't have the coronavirus. I've had this little cough going on for months. Oh, thank you.
Are these all twos running up with cough drops?
Yeah, see? Thank you for the twos. What will we do without
Yeah, that's cool.
So one of the things that sort of a 9 just sort of like falls into things, so like if they're watching TV, turn the TV on, hours later, they've just been channel surfing, because it's kind of like it's a comfortable thing to do. You just kind of zone out watching TV or whatever. You know, you may wake up at 2 in the morning with the TV on, kind of. Okay, let me see if I can go back. There we go. So they do have a kind of a positive outlook on life, which matches the 2 and the 7, who also have a positive approach to life. So then we come to the wings. Now, if you remember from last week, we discussed the 8s. And the 8s are very powerful people. They're the people who step forward with a whole lot of energy. So the 9, I guess you could say fortunately, has this wing because, you know, if they're not a power energy normally, to have a wing on the side there, the 8, is really good because it's going to bring out a lot of qualities and characteristics that they're going to need to develop. So we have then a combination. The 9 is the peacemaker, and they're joining energy, if you will, with the challenger side of themselves. So a 9 with an 8 wing seeks peace, conflict resolution through a strong cooperative approach. So again, this brings out their great quality of being mediators, and if they can tap into that power side of themselves, they'll be very forceful, they'll be very strong. They're not going to take any nonsense. They will be, you know, a strong mediator who's going to make sure that everybody's heard and that we come to a good decision here. Can explode with impulsive anger when self or others are threatened. So we know that the 8, if you push an 8, the 8 is going to push back and then some. That's just the reflex of the 8. So can be stubborn and defensive, can flip from placidity to aggression. And often it's sort of like you'll see that where there's maybe a passive aggression, and then all of a sudden it just flips into more of aggression. And at that point, you just let them be. Has a lusty side, sensually, materially, seeks comfort, habitual routines. And of course, again, just because of the energy of the 8, then, the 9s, who I generally are kind of introverted, can be more extroverted, more engaging, more social. All right, so then we move to the other wing. So then we have the Peacekeeper 9 now joining forces with the reformer or the perfectionist energy of the 1. So if the 9 moves over into the 1 position, then they're going to take on those characteristics. Finds a place by contributing to an ideal world through peacekeeping. So again, this all makes sense. The 1 is always trying to create an ideal world. That's where the 9 lives. That's what their perfectionism is about. They want justice, they want fairness, they want an ideal world. And now the 9 goes into that energy and does it through its natural talent for peacemaking. That's what the 9 will focus on in terms of an ideal world of peace. So again, a great gift, a great value. Has a strong sense of purpose, likes order. Again, the 1 likes to have order. And you can see again then probably if the 9 is someone who is getting a lot done, they're probably in their 1 wing. They're ordered, they've got their list, their to-do list, you know, crossing it off, getting it done. But when I would imagine that they're done with that list, that's when they can just sit back then. And it's like, you know, again, turning a switch. Okay, now I'm off the clock. And I can go back to just being me. And I can sleep in, or I can veg in front of the TV. And so again, it's it can be almost like a split personality. When you see someone who's like this, maybe outside the office, but when they're in the office, they're just like go, 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 go. Has an ability to synthesize information. So again, this ability of the 9 to scan, to take things in, they can do that with people and with information. And again, the 1, of course, has that ability also. So there's just this ability to see clearly. I've often said that. I'll be in meetings, and it's just obvious to me. It's like, God, how long is it going to take these people to understand or to get it? Because I just have that. It's just like a clarity. So the 9 can pick up on that also. They're very dependable. That's a really good word for a 9. They're solid. They're not flaky. They're grounded, organized. They can look aloof or detached, can be passive-aggressive, we talked about that. And then they can be more introverted, self-contained, if they have a strong 1 wing. And a little more reserved and a little more conservative than a 9 with an 8 wing. Okay, so next up are the lines. So where we go for growth and for development and evolution. So the 9 goes to the 3, who is the achiever, who is doing things. The 3s also have their lists of things to do. And so the 9 moves out of that lethargic space to a more action-oriented approach. They learn to feel special and important, because we've just said that's not a strong point. They don't feel necessarily that great about themselves. They're nothing special. But the 3 likes to think of themselves as they are somebody, that image part of it, and that they're important. So the 9 is getting in touch then with some of that energy, gets in touch with their passion, what claims their heart's desire. So this is obviously a great place for them, getting more energy, getting more enthusiastic about life, about what they really want. And at that point then, they can start to feel secure enough to display their accomplishments. And again, they can be very accomplished. They just won't be tooting their own horn necessarily, but if they take on some of that 3 energy, they will. They'll tell you about their accomplishments. Otherwise, you just may see all these plaques on their walls, but they'll never refer to them. But if you look, you can see all these things that they've done and that they've got first place for, etc. As